All right, right now there is that push I was telling you about to change the guardianship law. Part of that push coming from Christine, who I know you've been working now for years to free your mom, Karilyn.
That's true. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for having me on today. Unfortunately, the system is designed to protect the rights and welfare of vulnerable individuals. However, it's a system that's susceptible to abuse by unscrupulous court-appointed guardians, attorneys, and care managers. So unfortunately, when my communication was blocked and I had no access to my mother, I tried to resolve the situation amicably for months and I didn't get anywhere. So I had no other choice but to seek relief in the guardianship court system. And I was appalled and horrified at the injustices and the abuses that are occurring in the system by the same individuals that are entrusted to protect the rights of vulnerable individuals. And they're the ones that are engaging in the abusive behavior.
I know for you, it's your mom, and a lot of the stories that we've heard are parents. But for one woman, her name is Letty Lanzario. She's actually fighting for her son. Let's listen to what she had to say.
My son is being isolated from me. He has deteriorated. He has been over-medicated. My son does not want to live in the group home.
Now, when you hear these stories, Alan, I know we were talking, just personally about, really the emotional and also financial toll that this takes on so many people, Alan.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, Christine has really been through an arduous process, and, it was something that you would think on the surface could be relatively, I don't want to use the word simple, but it would be kind of a cut and dry, quick process. And it's really turned into, this drawn-out situation where, she's been through the courts and run into a lot of roadblocks. And it's something that, most people would throw up their hands and accept the status quo. That's not Christine. That's not what she's about. But, it's been extremely stressful for her. And, she is to be commended for her will in fighting for her mother.
Absolutely. We actually saw Christine at the state capitol, joined by lawmakers who are now trying to really put into motion something. I know New York State Senator Palumbo was speaking about this, so let's hear from him for a moment.
This is a problem nationwide. Very simple change to the mental hygiene law. What this bill will do is mandate a hearing within 10 days of the application to make a decision regarding visitation. That's all. We're not making an overall decision on the case. That will run its typical course as it would in the courthouse. Unless you can prove by clear and convincing evidence that this person should not see their loved one, they get to see them, and the hearing would be immediate.
Now, Christine, talk to me about the type of difference this will have for people like you.
Okay, so I've been litigating for 4 years, $400,000 it's cost me to litigate, and my mom is still in a constant state of torture, and I'm powerless to save her. So right now, what we're seeing in the court system is the courts are conducting a one-sided hearing where they're not giving that vulnerable individual their due process rights, the rights to appear in front of the judge, the right to be heard, to present their own evidence and testimony, and also family members are being denied their right to be heard in court and to present very relevant evidence as to show why their loved one should not be deemed incapacitated. It's a one-sided hearing, and the hearing is only with the side of the court-appointed guardians, attorneys, independent medical examiners, who, by the way, all gain unwarranted familiarity with the judges presiding over the cases because they're in front of the judges every day or weekly, and they are given carte blanche to make any decision for that elder. And unfortunately, the court just rubber stamps that decision, and it could be deeming them incapacitated. It could be blocking entire family members. So with this law would, with the presumption, you'd file a petition. Within 10 days after filing that petition, you have the right to have an evidentiary hearing where both sides can present evidence and testimony, not just the side of the court. And you have the right, your due process rights, your fundamental rights to be heard.
Yeah, let's actually hear from Fred Thiel, another lawmaker I know you're working with, and listen, he's also an attorney. But let's listen to what he had to say about this next move.
When it involves a celebrity, it gets national attention. But how many times does this occur when, you know, somebody isn't nationally known or internationally known, but just happens in day-to-day life?
Yeah, Alan, you know, you think about that and you have people, you know, say Britney Spears or Wendy Williams and now Anne Heche, you know, you have what's going on with her son, and those garner headlines. But there's so many families right here in the tri-state that are dealing with this and fighting for the rights of the people that they love, Alan.
Right. And as I said before, you know, not all of these individuals have the resources or really the knowledge to take steps to protect their rights. What's good about Karilyn's law is that it's a very simple mechanism, and it's not as extensive, it's not as expensive, and it gives them that right to be heard. Because, you know, if you're a celebrity, obviously you've got the resources and you've got the fame to get attention. Unfortunately, other individuals who are victimized by the system, you know, can't do that.
Yeah. All right. Let's hear from Brenda Daniel, who is fighting for her mom.
This happy, thriving, and physically fit woman was moved from her home of 40 years without my brother or my knowledge. The house was sold quickly and below market value. My mom was forced to reside in a deadly facility and isolated for over 14 months. All my mom's rights were violated. She was civilly dead.
I mean, when you hear that, it's just heartbreaking, Christine. And I know you've been reaching out to all these different victims and doing your best to really get their stories heard.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking. So after 3 years of litigating, and all my efforts were thwarted by these court-appointed individuals who would, when I questioned their abusive actions, you know, the family was villainized, myself included. So I decided to publish my mom's story last year in the magazine that I write for. And I got national attention. I was contacted by loved ones of victims nationwide, pleading for me to help them. So I'm fortunate that I have these connections in media and public relations, because that's my job. So I'm happy to be the voice for all these individuals. I'm currently working in 10 different states right now with family members of victims and speaking to their state legislators to enact similar legislation, such as Karilyn's law, to help them. And I'm also working with their networks locally to get their stories heard, because I applaud Britney Spears for speaking out on her story. Without her speaking out in court, we might not be in this position today. So you're right. Nobody is immune from guardianship abuse, no matter how celebrated or prominent the individual. So we're working together. I'm working with all these individuals you're hearing, and hopefully we can reform guardianship in their states too.
Yeah, one of them I know is Julie Belshi, who really, I mean, what she has to say. Listen, everybody, you got to take a listen to this.
Back in 2013, my parents were legally kidnapped from their home on the golf course in Las Vegas, Nevada. They were 76 and 74 years old and fully capable of living their life on their own independently. Guardianship 101 is isolate, over-medicate, steal the estate, defame the family in court, and then cremate.
I mean, you just hear that and you think, my goodness, Alan. And for families, to have to wait months or years for due process.
You know, it's extremely difficult and it's extremely frustrating. And, you know, the problem is, the inherent problem is that people who are placed in a guardianship position really are essentially granted the right to play God over medical and financial decisions. And again, there's oversight, but that oversight is very minimal. And, that's why legislation like Karilyn's law is so essential. Just to put a check and balance on a guardianship who might be abusing their authority.
I know Cynthia Misfit agrees with you. Let's listen to her.
Karilyn's law would have prevented them from isolating my mother for as long as they did. She was isolated from us for over 14 months. I would have got an evidentiary hearing within 10 days, and we need that law.
Yeah, I mean, you hear her saying that we need that law, and I know that's something you've been trying to do. You're in New York, your mom is in Florida, and you're flying back and forth.
Yeah, in fact, last year I took 70 trips to Florida just to see my mom. Just to visit with my mom cost me $400,000. This is what's happening in the court system. To this day, we've been asking for an evidentiary hearing for 4 years, and we're being denied that right. So this would cure and remedy that problem and get us into court, stop the isolation of these vulnerable individuals. Because when you isolate, over-medicate, these individuals deteriorate rapidly, both physically and mentally, and they often suffer premature deaths before they're ever freed from the system.